Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan. And we have a day early podcast because we have a 3-day early game. So tonight, the New York Giants will be hosting the Dallas Cowboys Thursday at 8:15 p.m. at MetLife Stadium. I will be in attendance. Cranky Fan will be in attendance. And I think it might rain a little bit. How's it going, Cranky Fan?
Greetings from Charlotte. Work takes me here. I have a flight home tomorrow. Like last year against the Cowboys when bad weather prevented me from showing up. It's a potential for that as well. The good news last year was I got to miss that disaster. There may be another disaster waiting for us tomorrow night, but we'll see. Let's talk about it and see if that's really true or if we actually have a shot.
So over the course of this week, which has been a short week, the Giants signed tight end Joel Wilson. I looked him up a little bit, didn't really know anything about him, went to Central Michigan. I don't think he's taken an NFL snap, so I'm not sure. But the Giants worked out 4 tight ends this week. They signed this one. So he looks like more of a mover in space receiver style tight end to me. At least that's what he looked like at Central Michigan. So
it completely changes my prediction for tonight's game and the rest of the season.
Yeah. And Lawrence Cager, I believe, moved to IR. So I think this is just the corresponding move, the practice squad tight end for right now. But it indicates that Lawrence Cager is not close, I don't think.
No.
Other injuries to watch. These are bad. The Giants have already declared Adoree Jackson and Drew Phillips out with calf injuries that they sustained during Sunday's game. This is why we hate Thursday games. And Darius Slayton is questionable with a thumb injury that he sustained, I think, in the fourth quarter.
This is your semi-regular reminder that those calf injuries did not happen on the artificial turf at MetLife Stadium. So. Sure, I think it's actually important to note that sometimes that people are so quick to say playing here. That's why we have all these injury problems, and there's a couple of injuries that happen, lower body, leg ones, and it didn't happen at home.
Yeah, you're right. Thursday night game sucks. I hate it. I don't need to go over it every single time, but this is, you're going to get. I think there's a high potential for a lopsided matchup when you have a division matchup where one team has been consistently fairly good and one team has been consistently fairly bad, and you put them on a shortened schedule where their depth guys are playing, such as the cornerback 2 is now cornerback 3, and nickel cornerback 2 is now nickel cornerback 1. This is not really a great recipe for a great product, but the NFL doesn't care because Giants Cowboys makes money anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the limited time to properly game plan and break down film by coaches to install a defense. Now, in a normal situation is difficult, but now you have to kind of play with moving parts and parts that shouldn't be where they should be. Makes it just even. It's just like go out there and play and do your best, and that sounds like a recipe for disaster for a team that's trying to find its footing.
Yeah. Now on the flip side, Dallas also has cornerback 2 is doubtful, and their safety 3 is doubtful as Kalen Carson and Marquise Bell. So just it sucks all around, but those are our Dallas injury reports there. Yeah, so let's talk about this game. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. 1-2 as well, with a strong win against a familiar team, the Cleveland Browns, and a hugely embarrassing loss to New Orleans, and then a bad loss again last week to Baltimore. What do you think? Tell me a little bit about Dallas.
Grump, I'm looking at the numbers, crunching numbers about Dallas, and they are quite a dichotomy of a team. They are first in passing offense. They're 30th in rushing offense. They are 32nd in the league in red zone defense. Their total defense is 28th. They're basically equivalent to the Commanders, who we saw. They're just not a good team. They just happen to have a quarterback and an offense where, they're just reduced to throwing, and Dak Prescott just moves chains. I mean, there's nothing explosive about them. I mean, this season, the 3 games they had, they don't have a rusher who's rushed for 50 yards. They don't have a receiver who's caught 100 yards in a game. They're just you know, I don't know what it is. I know they've had a bunch of injuries. We both think that Mike McCarthy is teetering on the edge. I think we had a conversation last week about where we'd rank NFC East head coaches, and we weren't very high on Mike McCarthy at
Well,
all.
it was this week. It was like 2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago. Time is going fast and going slow at the same time. um, I don't know. I just think that if we weren't so banged up in the secondary, I would think we have more of a shot. But I just feel like, for all of their you know, all the troubles they have running the ball and stuff, I still think this is going to be a game of big plays. And I think Dallas has the ability to have more big plays we do. And if we fall behind, I think we're going to be in big, big trouble. Um, so I don't look at this as a game of 2 teams of equals where we can just get in the muck and get in the mud with them. We're going to have to run the ball, and we're going to have to, they are 30th in rushing defense. So that's our only hope, is to keep it ugly. Keep it ugly, keep it a fast game, keep the chains moving, keep the clock moving to have any shot in this game.
Well, let's talk about Dallas as a bad team. Numbers I think can be a little bit deceiving. I'll say Dallas is a weird team. So
yeah,
when I look at this, the Cleveland game, they get off to a hot start, and maybe Cleveland is hapless. You know what I mean? Like, the Giants also took care of Cleveland pretty good. And are we really saying that the Giants are great? I'm not sure. But maybe Cleveland is just really bad. And then you look at the Saints game. The score got out of control very quickly. It's pretty clear the Cowboys had a lot of trouble defending the run, defending Alvin Kamara. You have a pretty... Yeah, I mean, you have a more than competent quarterback in Derek Carr who can stretch the field. And then also, not only that, like, in the first half, it's sort of a little bit tick for tat. Like, the score isn't out of control. I think it's like 28-13 in the second quarter, and then Dak throws a pick that's really just an excellent play by the safety or a corner, Paulson Adebo, I think, and he gets this ridiculous return out of it too, where he reverses field and puts the Saints in scoring position. So, I think that the score got away from them early in that game, but then you see Dallas come back at halftime and actually figure some things out. And I think you saw sort of the same thing against the Ravens, except you don't have the really bad pick that sets up an additional score. That game ended by 3 points, the 28-25 game against the Ravens. So I think the numbers are a little skewed because they seem to be making halftime adjustments. And one of the adjustments I saw against the Ravens was simply that Dak was getting crushed in the first half. All they had to do was just leave everything into heavy protection. Keep a tight end in there, and then also have your running back chip. And all of a sudden, Dak has plenty of time, and you're looking at far better wide receivers and tight ends than Baltimore has on the back end. And you see the way that Dallas is able to crawl back. So where I really think the disadvantage is, and it's, I'm kind of just talking out my thoughts here. I didn't have this planned, but this is almost a beautiful bow to put on our back and forth here, is this comes down to Mike McCarthy making these adjustments too late.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Dallas has plenty of horses. They have their issues. I don't think that they are, even just looking at the roster, you have a transitioning defense into a new scheme with Mike Zimmer from Dan Quinn, and maybe some of those pieces don't fit exactly like a glove, or maybe the glove needs to mold around the pieces a little bit there. But you have a little bit of that, and they're not great, but there is plenty of talent on the roster here, I
Yeah,
think.
I'm going to counter that a little bit by, those it's halftime adjustments in the third quarter. They were also in the gray area of garbage time too. So
I'm not going to buy that because, well, I guess,
yeah,
you know what? I'll give you a little bit of that, but only because Dallas executed a onside kick against the Ravens. That's the only reason I'm going to give you that. But you're not going to tell me a game that really ends 3 points away is anything. It is garbage time. It just can't be that
it
they
was 28-6.
at
That's
halftime.
that's over 3 scores.
Yeah, okay, it's a halftime.
That's
It's
so. I
halftime.
mean,
There's no like three scores. You know,
that's the end of the third quarter. So they scored 19 points in the fourth quarter. So it's 28-6 with 15 minutes left. That's kind of garbage time.
I guess.
I'm not saying what you're saying is not true, but I just want to temper that a little bit by saying,
I don't think it's due to lack of halftime adjustment. That's what I'm saying. The adjustment is too late. I think also they couldn't stop the run on defense. Baltimore was able to hold the ball.
mm-hmm.
So, and also they weren't able to put. Well, yeah. I think more of the problems are on defense when I look at this team.
Yep. Oh, agreed.
I think that they can score quickly, and that will always make them pretty dangerous. Maybe that's where I'm going with this. But like the bigger problems for them is the defense. They can't stop the run, and let's face it,
Fair.
if you can't stop the run, who are the three teams? The three teams you wouldn't want to face. It's got to be San Francisco, Baltimore, and someone else,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, right.
Maybe it's New Orleans.
Yeah, and you know something? In this matchup tonight, the Giants seem to be running the ball pretty decently.
They are. I'm just.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if those stats are just a little bit skewed right now. It's early, but like I'm not even. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
yeah.
If the sample size doesn't include Baltimore, maybe they're not that bad against the run. That's kind of where I'm saying it.
I mean,
I think they're bad, but I don't
I don't
think
want
they're
to just
horrible.
keep throwing numbers, but like some more evidence how bad it is. They're last in the league in red zone defense. 90% of drives are being converted to touchdowns.
Yeah, that's
how.
That's really bad.
That's telling you they can't stop the run a lick, even when it's in short yardage. It's one thing. Oh, they're getting 6 yards on first down all the time, but that's like, if you're on the 5 or something, you need to bow up, and they can't. So
that's true. Yeah, no, the bigger problems are definitely on defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess when I'm looking at this game, here's my biggest problem. Let's talk about Dallas's defense there. So I don't think that this is I think there's ways that you can handle this, right? This is something that the Giants can do. Run the ball. I think they struggle badly with the run. I think that we can feed Singletary particularly stretch plays and with screens. Let them. They know they're not good at running at stopping the run. You hammer them a couple times in the middle, and then you get people cheating, and that's where you can hit them with stretch plays, with zone reads with Daniel Jones, screen plays especially. You get over aggressive defensive ends and edges, and that's how you really, really, really hurt them because Singletary is going to run through defensive backs as long as he holds on to the ball. When it comes to throwing the ball, I think that with the injury to Kalen Carson, you have. Don't be afraid to attack that. I don't love Wandale against Jordan Lewis. That's a really physical slot corner, and he's pretty athletic. So I think that if you get officials that are not going to call ticky-tack stuff, you're going to lose that battle. You might, and with Daniel Jones's precision lately, you might be throwing picks. I would rather be hitting Darius Slayton. Hopefully he plays. If not, it's going to be a big game for Jalen Hyatt, I guess.
Play his spot.
But
yeah, nice.
I wonder if he can't go, if they have to go to, I don't know, like Bryce Ford Wheaton or something like that. There's just some routes, or they're just gonna have to completely change their game plan for wide receiver 2.
Or we just might see even more targets going to
Neighbors. Well, yeah, and the other thing too is see if you can continue to scheme Neighbors into space. Like, don't get you do both of those things as long as you can attack cornerback 2. If you have to dedicate any help to cornerback 2, you should be able to find ways to get Neighbors into space.
And on the flip side of that, there's enough tape on Neighbors now where I think defense coordinators really have to pay attention to him, and you
Yep.
might see some more help. So, if there's a perceived mismatch where someone like Wandell might be, in a bad situation, he may get a little help because there might be just A, for what Neighbors is doing, and B, for the heavy workload he's going to get.
Hmm.
There may be some opportunities. I mean, this is going to be, I think, a game where the team with the most big plays is going to win. And if we can somehow, you know, get Neighbors in this space, or if we can somehow get, Hyatt open on a fly and just hit him,
Well, I'm
one or
not
two of
saying
those
I'm
plays may be the difference in this game.
sure. Two things I want to mention because there are two players I didn't talk about much. Hyatt. I'm not going to believe that Hyatt is going to be effective until I see DJ hit any deep ball yet this year, and until I see Hyatt get game action other than 8 to 10 fly
And
routes.
and the
That's
biggest
really it.
thing we have to watch this season, I think, for this Giant offense to do anything more than what they're doing now is let's watch that progression of Daniel Jones because I think they're going to keep trying to take deep shots,
Yeah,
and let's just see how inaccurate he still is. He's still wildly inaccurate, or that even if it's like just off a fingertip, I'm going to feel better about it at least than what we've been seeing so far.
sure.
But I do think you still have to keep trying it, even if you're not even successful once. You keep trying it because if you just give up on it altogether and you have this offense condensed even more closer to the line of scrimmage, that's bad news for us. And as relatively successful we've been running the ball so far, all of a sudden, if you have guys cheating more and more, they're not worried about backside help. That's going to go away.
Yeah, and the other player I want to mention, I think this might be, I mentioned I don't love the Wandale matchup with Jordan Lewis. I don't mind this being a Theo Johnson coming out party. You see, Dable is very, very pushy with getting Johnson involved. He adamantly defended what looked like it was designed to be a cross field play that was, Jones gets his arm hit and it almost gets picked over the middle. But, Dan Duggan pointed out that that was a play that he was adamant was going to be a big play had Jones had the ability to get the ball off cleanly. So they're gonna. I think that Dable is desperate to get Theo Johnson involved, and I think that he may not have any other options but to force feed some stuff there with Slayton nursing a thumb on a guy who already might have 9 fingers to begin with, and a bad matchup with Wandale.
My other key to the game on the other side of the ball to me is Deontay Banks.
Okay,
I
tell me
think,
about that.
I'm looking at some more of these DAC numbers, and, he's leading the league in yardage, right? Cowboys are only 23rd in yards per attempt. So, again, this is going back to my whoever can get the deep pass, whoever have the big explosive play, who can have more of them is going to win this game. And I think that's going to really fall on Deontay Banks's back, where he's going to be covering CD Lamb, and he can't let him get loose. He's going to have to play the game of his life so far in the NFL. And I think there's, you know, we had the conversation earlier in the week. I know 2 days ago, wasn't last week, about what is his ceiling ultimately going to be, and I think this is going to be. He's been seeing some pretty good wide receiver ones so far this year. This is another big test for him, and hopefully, we get enough of a pass rush where he doesn't have to be out on an island all by himself, and hopefully he could start making a play because I think this game may come down to shit, we lost this game because of one deep bomb. And I don't want that to be, I hate for that to be the reason. So I'm going to key on him to be, to step up and, this is the key matchup for me.
Yeah, so this is where the conversation gets a little bit more disappointing. Like I see a weak defense that we can really win on the ground when we're on offense, but defensively, I think it goes far beyond Deontay Banks. I'm not saying anything you said is wrong, but for starters, we need to make sure that Dallas doesn't have a running game. And I say that because Dallas hasn't really been able to run the ball well, but they've been behind in 2 games for so much time that running the ball was a little bit out of the question for a lot of them, right?
Yeah, I got a number here for you. I
Okay.
believe I read they have been trailing the fourth most amount of any team in the league so far after 3 games in
So
time of game.
I'm not sure that Dallas's inability to run is due to lack of ability. So basically, what I'm saying is the Giants can't revert back to the week 2 defense we saw. That can't happen. Where we just allowed a million yards on the ground. Um, Following that, uh, aside from not allowing them to get a running game, um, they have to be able to beat Dallas when they're in heavy protection. So like, and they have to be able to get Prescott all the way to the ground. It's you know, I think that their explosive play numbers that you mentioned might have a lot to do with teams just playing cover 2 and protecting the deep part of the field, dropping back into zone, and you know you saw some zone blitzes. They are Dak is plenty good if he's able to have the time to utilize the talented skill position guys to get open in zones. So
Mhm.
they can march down the field, with the under 20-yard plays, no problem if you give them time. You know what I mean? Like, and if it comes down to, I look at the Giants and I'm kind of hoping here that Shane Bowen has a lot of really good disguised coverages that look like they're going to be bringing 5 or 6 guys, and maybe they do, but it comes from a different spot, and we find our ways falling back into zone where, we're not losing right off the bat in man because, you're right about Deontay Banks. Like you need safety help over the top with CeeDee Lamb on him. And then you look at like Jalen Tolbert might give Nick McLeod or Cordell Flott a run for their money, and he's like the third best receiver that Dallas has. Like,
Mhm.
you have Brandon Cooks that can stretch the field. You've got Jake Ferguson that's good over the middle of the field. Like, I'm very worried. This is a bad week to have no slot corner and no corner 2, because I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong. Nick McLeod being a upgrade to limited participant this week seems a little bit fortuitous. Like, you don't think he's being pushed along? He's not really 100% at all.
Mhm.
So I
Agreed.
think we're gonna get a lot of Cordell Flott on like Brandon Cooks. This is a horrible, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the worst situation for the Giants is to face them after a double-digit injury that's supposed to be guarding probably the best part of the team. Like,
Right.
they are very deep at wide receiver with, I would say, 4 guys that are capable of big plays with CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, and Cavante Turpin. And then you add in, Jake Ferguson, who's really good at moving the chains over the middle. I am. They have to be able to beat Dallas when they're in heavy protection. That's really it. Because I think the defensive line, the blitzes, they can get there if Dallas doesn't do heavy protection. I'm not as worried about that.
Right.
Um,
But when it's 3rd and 11 because they can't run the ball on first down or second down, and they're going to be back there protecting, they got to beat them. They got to win their
that's
battles.
Yeah, exactly. You said it a lot better than I just did.
I want to follow up on something you said that I wanted your points. The Cowboys have the third fewest amount of rushing attempts so far this year. So that goes to the point of always being behind potentially. Um, but they're also fifth worst in yards per carry. So that's telling you that they're not running the ball much.
I think it's yeah, it's definitely a
It's
combo.
also they really can't run the ball either.
Yeah.
So it's whether they're giving up on the run early because they're down so much, which is probably the case. But the fact is, it's just kind of when they are running early in games or whatever, it's been relatively ineffective. So they have no they have no rushes of more than 20 yards
Then the
this
Giants need to
entire game.
continue
So
that advantage then.
the explosive play game is not going to happen from them running the ball. It's going to be on the outside going deep or getting a guy in space who just, you know, catches it in the flat and just takes off or something. So that's where we're going to win or lose this thing.
The other way we could lose is, I'm just going to mention special teams really briefly. Um, no big plays. Cavante Turpin is a very capable returner. The new kickoff, forget the kickoff, the punts. You know what I mean? We have to make sure that we're covering everything. Make sure, I would even say punt.
No block kicks.
Yeah. No block, God, no block kicks. But yeah, with the new kickoff, they really have to make sure that they're covering their gaps and making tackles. It would be a really shit way to lose if there was another special teams. Yeah, it would be 4 weeks in a row I'm complaining about special teams.
Yeah.
All right, are you ready to hear our summer prediction for this game?
As much as I ever want to hear my voice, let's go for it.
Cranky fan, tell me a little bit about Cowboys at Giants.
That sounds like it's going to be a miserable experience for everybody involved. I think it's going to be miserable for the Giants having to play a team like Dallas with not that much time to prepare, not that much time to rest. I think it's going to be a miserable crowd. I think that you're going to see one of the highest ratio of Cowboy fans to Giant fans you'll potentially ever see at MetLife, other than being like a week 17 and the Giants are 3-1,000,000 and the Cowboys have clinched. This is going to be the week where the talking heads really start to get on the Giants' case. And this is where the talk of hot seats is going to start. This is where the talk of, okay, this is now we potentially have a fourth coach that's been a bust. All these different things are going to happen. I just can't see, in optimal situation, bye week, at home, 1:00, everybody healthy going up against a team like Dallas. I give them a, fighting chance at home. Maybe I might be, with giant colored glasses saying, maybe I'll squeak out a Giants and pencil for this one. But with pissing into, again, a hurricane wind in your face with every factor going against you. And remember, too, they're going to be on the road for 2 weeks before this. So their normal routines are all screwed up. So if they're playing, that Cleveland game is a 1:00 Sunday. They're going to fly back Sunday night. They're not going to be in their normal routine. I just can't see how they win this game. We know all about the Cowboys. All about, we saw them get blown out twice last year. Although, you can put somewhat asterisk on both of them due to, no Andrew Thomas in the first game, playing with Tommy DeVito the second game. So let's not get crazy about what happened last year. Is really a follow through for this year. But Dallas is much better than us, and I just, it might be very close to a home game for them. So I'm putting this as a loss in Ben as well.
I think that this is the final year of the Mike McCarthy Cowboys era. Dan Quinn is gone. I have thought for a while that the Dan Quinn defense was far more scary than the Mike McCarthy offense. I don't want to belabor the point. I've been pretty vocal about it. But what I'm really trying to transition to is that Mike Zimmer is an excellent defensive coordinator. He's already shown that he's a pretty darn good head coach. He was at least fairly successful as a head coach in Minnesota. And he was brought in to coach the defense. I do think that this is a kick in Mike McCarthy's ass by Jerry Jones, that he brought in someone that had head coaching experience already. So when I look at this Cowboys team, I think that in the past it was very easy to win when you had an offense on the other side of the field that couldn't even move the ball an inch. You know what I mean? We were absolutely fucking helpless against that defense. They knocked the shit out of Daniel Jones to the point where he was foaming at the mouth. You know what I mean? Like they in the first drive, after a blocked field goal or whatever happened in that first game, man, that game was absolutely painful. Opening day last year, the home opener.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn is gone. Mike Zimmer is a great defensive coordinator, but he runs a very different style. And I think that maybe it's possible that players that were able to play a little bit more freely, like perhaps Micah Parsons, perhaps Trayvon Diggs, in the prior scheme, will be asked to do things more traditional to their position. Like what is Micah Parsons' position? Edge, linebacker, Yeah, outside linebacker,
He's
inside linebacker,
just
exactly.
he's
But
MP. He's a Micah Parsons. He
now
does what
it's possible that Mike Zimmer continues to use him effectively in that role. It's also possible that he puts him in the middle of the defense. It's possible that Trayvon Diggs does not have the freedom to just give super off coverage and trust his technique to close and get all these interceptions. He's also coming off of an injury.
I,
Um,
I think
I think that this offense looks less scary to me than it has in the past. And this defense, this early in the year under a new coordinator, might be less scary to me. I still think that this is a loss in pencil, and that's how I'm going to predict this, because the Thursday turnaround after the Browns away game, like you said, that's a lot to ask. This team, the Giants, are not good enough for any Thursday matchup. They're all going to be bad. Even against bad teams, they are not good enough to win in unfair scenarios like a
and, and
three-day
that and
turnaround.
that takes me from a pencil to a pen.
Wow. So, I don't know, shockingly accurate?
Shockingly accurate, and unfortunately, back when we did the show in July or whenever it was, I didn't have my old farmer's almanac to know a hurricane was actually headed right towards Florida. So, I'm not. I'm apologizing in advance for what now seems like inappropriate, but to all my friends down in Florida, please evacuate and please get out. But yeah, I think we both were kind of dead on our outlook going into the game and what predictions might happen. I don't have much to deviate from what my initial fears were going into this game. I still think we're right for for hot seat 2024 to start. I think, you know, especially after last week where you get a little bit of a reprieve. Like, okay, they won a game. Let's take a step back. We look like we were well coached, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, if all of a sudden Dallas comes here and takes us to the woodshed, it's going to get really loud and get loud quick. Not that I really seriously think anybody is on a real hot seat, but the noise is definitely going to start and the sheep are going to repeat themselves. So, this is a perception game. If we win this game, don't laugh, Grump, but we're 2-2 and in the hunt for the division.
Well, hang on. Before you keep going,
Yeah.
don't laugh, nothing. I mean, this is a perception game for both of these franchises. I mean, how
Yeah.
on the hot seat is Mike McCarthy in the national media if he loses a third time? You know what I mean?
Well, they lose to us, especially us.
Especially us, and the two losses before were embarrassing in score. Losing to us is losing to an embarrassing team, a team that they haven't lost to in at least 2 years, right?
This would be the most embarrassing of the losses for sure. It's the prime time window. It's a rivalry. They have, used us like a dirty whore the last couple of years, and all of a sudden, they lose this game when things are sliding downhill as it is. You're right, but I'm more concerned about me and us. So yeah, I wasn't really even thinking about hot seats on their side. I'm more concerned about us, but absolutely. I mean, we could have, again, we mentioned this on the last show. We could have 3 coaches in this division on hot seats before too long.
Yeah.
And we might have a situation next year, it's not out of this world to that this won't happen, but the leading tenure of any coach in this division could be coaching his 18th game next year.
Yeah. Yeah. So going into your thoughts on the game, does it line up?
Yeah, I mean, you can almost replay it and insert it right now for how I think this game is. I think nothing changes. I think there's gonna, again, talking about the crowd. I think those Cowboy fans, they bought those tickets as soon as they announced that the schedule was coming out and tickets got available that we could sell them on Ticketmaster and StubHub. They scarfed these tickets up. So even though they're 1-2, Cowboy fans are bandwagony, but they're not that bandwagony. And they still, for all the problems they're having, for the type of meathead leather neck fan that they are, that they want to be able to talk shit to Giant fan. And, after every play, turn around and tell you how great they are. And because they're having their own problems doesn't mean that we don't have our problems. They're still favored. They're still better than us. They still should beat us. They should beat us convincingly. So that element is still going to be there. Um, you know, I've been pleasantly surprised with our running game so far. This is going to be, it seems really weird to say, you know, facing a team that's like the worst rushing defense in the league, this is a good test to see how good we really are. But I feel like this is a good test to see how every game to me is a test to see how good we really are with these things. Or, did we just happen to play one good game and it's not really that good of a running game? Or no, this is getting more and more consistent. I can start counting on this to be, a decent running game. So it's important to me to see it's continually being good. And if you're facing after 3 games a very bad rushing defense, run it down their freaking throat. I mean, I would love to see time possession in this game 38-22. That would make me really, really happy. That to me is our path to a win. Is again getting in the muck, getting in the mud, holding the ball as long as we can, preventing the potential big plays, from Dak and CeeDee Lamb. I just don't think we're good enough that I can count on these things yet. So I still think we're going to lose. Baby steps for me is a team like Dallas doesn't come in here and embarrass us. Thinking maybe they don't embarrass us. I think they'll beat us comfortably, but I don't think it's going to be one of those, hey, Grump, we can catch that 907 train. I don't think it's going to be one of those games, but I think we don't win. Let's give it a rather ugly 24-14 loss.
Interesting. I think that a win, in not giving a shit about what's going on in Arlington, a win says a lot for not just Brian Daboll. Forget Brian Daboll, more this team. The question of beating Dallas for the first time since Brian Daboll got here, including a time that they had lost to a backup quarterback. I think you can get the stories that this team is actually turning some kind of corner, even if the story in reality is that Dallas is falling off of a cliff. And what really stinks is I think that if they had given optimal circumstances, which I actually said back in July, given optimal circumstances, or I think you said this, I think that they win this game. I think that Dallas is on a confidence slide, and if you have your starting corners in this game, I think that there's absolutely a way that the Giants win this game. But you're right. You're unfortunately right about the crowd. It is a primetime weekday game. This is the hardest game to get the Giants season ticket holder to. And so
we understand it. I mean, we get it.
I don't like the game. I don't like the idea of a Thursday game. It's incredibly inconvenient to go to. It's a bitch for me, and I would, drop anything for a Giants game that's in my area. So the fact that it's inconvenient for me says what it should say to anybody who has a very important job or a family, you know what I mean, to take care of, or, like
Sure.
kids soccer practice, these kinds of things, or just don't have the energy after driving to work in rush hour traffic or whatever. Like, I do get it. And you're right. This is going to be a very close to a Dallas home game. Now, I actually don't think it's going to be ugly. I think that, it'll be ugly defense, I think, on both sides. So I think there's going to be plenty of scoring. I don't think we get embarrassed. I do think we lose, like I said in July. But I think that this is a game where we stand toe-to-toe, and it doesn't matter. The narrative of hot seat continues, even though there are plenty of excuses for losing to Dallas on a short week with 2 starting corners out on a team that had no corner 2 at the beginning of the season.
Something, I'm curious. What do you think the overall fan base thinks? Do you think if we lose, let's say we lose by 1 score, do you think the fan base feels encouraged that we've turned a corner and things are looking up because it's Dallas, or are they just pissed that, boy, this Dallas team kind of sucks, we should have won this game?
I don't think the average fan is at all encouraged if they don't win the game, no matter how it looks.
I agree. I agree 100%. I
think even losing ugly, even if they look like shit, the average fan is like, basically what I'm saying is the average fan cares more about wins. They'll complain. I think the Twitter fan could complain even if they blow them out. If you know what I mean,
Yeah.
they're that's a totally different world. But yeah, I think the average fan cares about wins. So I the average fan isn't concerned about how bad they looked last year. If they're not winning, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um, and for
I mean that's a
I have
sign of
I have
hop.
I
That
have
to me is a sign of
excuses
hop
for
CD.
this GM, but the year three still bad kind of thing is the only thing that really matters to the average fan.
Yeah,
That's
I
so,
I agree. I think you know even little. I think there's been enough losing, from last year and the beginning of this year where I think they've lost a lot of their currency of, hey, we're building this thing, give it time, blah, 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 blah. And you're right. Now it just becomes a matter of wins and losses. And then when it becomes a division rival and a team that you hate, you just don't want to lose to them, period. It unfortunately becomes a question of W's and L's.
anyway, I think they lose 31-27. I think that this is more of a high scoring game. I think the defenses stink, and I do think that this is a back and forth game. I just think that they're just better right now.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, so you're not the average fan. Are you more encouraged by this might be too general of a question, but play along with me. Would you be more encouraged with this team if they lost 31-27 or 17-14?
I feel like I've been saying this for like 6 months. What do you mean? I have been looking for offensive improvement. It's easy to fix a defense. If they can score, I said all along, if they can score close to 30 points a game, then, that's encouraging, especially the fact that Daniel Jones hasn't really looked great in any of these games. So if they continue to score lots of points, not the average fan, will be encouraged by the difference this team looks. You can flip a
I
defense in a year.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
And I know something. Daniel Jones, he looked horrible in week one. I don't think he was not looked great. I'm not going to put that for last week. I mean,
I don't think he looked great.
He was very efficient. He was very efficient in an offense that's been tweaked to do what he can do well, or what he can do now. So
efficient is fine. He didn't look great. None of that was great this year. Nothing has been great. Efficient is a perfectly fine thing, but like Brock Purdy is closer to great than he is right now.
Yeah, but I think what you said was he hasn't looked good.
I didn't. I said he hasn't looked great.
All right. Well,
my point being, if it's more impressive that they're scoring points and Daniel Jones isn't lighting up. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's not Jaden Daniels out there. If you were telling me that they're scoring 30 points because Jalen Hyatt is able to stretch the field, we're seeing the jump from him. Malik Neighbors is a freak, which is true. And on top of that, Theo Johnson is proving to be, whatever. And we got this, Daniel Jones is able to run like he used to. That sounds like they should be scoring 30 points. So that sounds like everything is perfect. I don't even expect perfect, but the fact that the quarterback, Jalen Hyatt, is not taken, that step yet. Daniel Jones hasn't hit a deep ball yet. So the fact that they're close to scoring 30 points is
without the benefit of and also have really the benefit of a lot of turnovers the other way too, and creating short fields and that too. I think we are earning every point we score, doing it the hard way, the long way. That's that to me is kind of a sign of in a way of improvement on this team.
If it continues, if it
continues. I mean,
they did lose to Washington, and we also played Cleveland, and then we didn't look good offensively week one whatsoever.
Right,
so.
But it is incremental improvement over last year. We probably don't win those games.
Sure.
So that's what we're looking for. We're not trying to be sunshine pumpers, but we're trying to find things to say this is a positive. This going to become a trend, and we're seeing some green shoots right now.
Washington is traveling to Arizona. What do you think?
Nice test for another one for Jaden Daniels on the road. It's hard to go out west or come east. I'm going to pick Arizona.
I think that I don't know. I'm gonna go Arizona too. I think Marvin Harrison's been slowly getting involved, and Jaden Daniels. It's easy to look at last week and be like, oh my god. And then it's kind of easy to look at the week before and he was not that great.
Yeah,
So
he was way running for his life. Yeah,
yeah,
and wasn't doing. Yeah,
yeah. So and it's not just Jaden Daniels. It's the whole offense. Can
yep.
that offensive line hold 2 weeks in a row? So I'm
Doesn't
going
travel.
Arizona as well, but I'm not. I don't feel super confident about it. Washington could
No,
easily win that game. Yeah.
I can be very honest, Grump. I don't feel super confident about any pick against any team in this league anymore.
Yeah. Really.
I mean, every week is a zig and a zag. Long out of my survivor pick where I thought I was. That's a guaranteed win. It's just my confidence level in picking anything is not so great anymore.
Well, why don't you pick the Eagles at Bucks for me?
Fucking Bucks. The annual knock me out of a survivor team is always the Bucks. This game's in Tampa?
I think so.
So this is a rematch in the same location as the playoffs from last year. I don't know what the hell happened with the Bucks last week. I watched that game and their offense looked absolutely awful in that game. I think they rebound. I think that the problems with Philly are going to keep. You can't wallpaper over problems because one tight end is uncovered and runs 80 yards, and on one play, a running back has a gaping hole and runs through for a touchdown. Seriously.
Yeah.
That team did nothing besides 2 plays in that whole game. All of a sudden, Hurts and Sirianni are not best buddies all of a sudden. I think all the underlying issues are still there. I think if you played that game last week 10 times, they're probably losing at 8. I think the Bucks win.
I agree with a lot of what you say, but the only thing that's making me feel differently is that last week's game, they held New Orleans to 3 points. Now, you're right. The Eagles' offense, you talked about Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, all that. True. They scored no points through late halftime, but it was 3-0 in halftime, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think the Bucks' offense is as challenging for Philly as New Orleans' offense. So I'll say
that was a massive head scratcher too, because I think we were, it was early, but people were like, "Wow, is this another reincarnation of the Rams from the Greatest Show on Turf?" And it's like, well, wait a minute, and that got brought back to earth really quickly.
But so I think the Eagles win this game. But I agree about everything else you said about the offense, and I think that the Eagles fan doesn't feel great about the win. Like, it's not a blowout. It's another one that they'll cheer, but Philly fans are not afraid to call out the problems on their team, even if they're winning. So
I forget what podcast I listened to today, and I give credit to whoever it was, but they said this is the sweet spot for the Philadelphia sports fan. They're winning, but they still have things to complain about. And that's exactly what this Eagles team, I think, is going to be.
It's very justified, yeah. So yeah. I think they'll be, what are they? They're 1-2 right now. I think they'll be 2-2 at the end of this. Okay. And that's going to do it for this episode. And we will see you guys on Tuesday morning.
Well,
I guess you're going to see us Friday afternoon, right?
Well, first you're going to see us Thursday at L16 for the tailgate, the Talking Giants tailgate. We will both be there. Flights permitting, but yeah, the plan is to be there and hopefully get to see some of you guys. And, hopefully we're talking to you Friday afternoon about a giant win. I mean, it's been a long time since we beat Dallas and a long time since we beat the Eagles. A real Eagle game. Let's do it. Let's get really excited. I need some excitement in my life.
Yeah, so you can catch that victory podcast, we hope, on Friday afternoon on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and, of course, YouTube. So be sure to follow us on those platforms. And, of course, on Twitter at @football_grump, @the Cranky Fan. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.